want to thank everybody who's been with me, my Xbox clan.
When Kobe going back to play Madison Square Garden, and he's like, hey, hook me up with dinner with Heath Ledger.
Like Russell Westbrook, that was a great feat the other day. I couldn't even tweet it out.
It's Coach Frank Vogel here, full of enthusiasm and positive energy.
Well, first of all, you don't smoke peyote.
And there was a couple games where I was at a hookah lounge. That's the truth. I wasn't smoking hookah, but I was there.
There was a time when the Israelites were wandering in the desert and all of a sudden bread came down from heaven. That's kind of what today feels like to have KCP join.
Welcome back to Bulls vs. Blazers. As always, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google, anywhere else that you can get podcasts. Make sure you subscribe, rate, review. Go to patreon.com/BullsVBlazers to sign up for the premium fee. That's $3 a month, an extra episode a week. I am Sean Highkin. With me, as always, Erik Gundersen.
Yo, yeah, that $3 a month gets you into the family. And that's when we say shout out to our family, that's our Patreon subscribers. So just if you want to,
if you're listening now and you're not in the Patreon, you're not a part. When we say shout out to our family, we're not talking about you. But if you want us to be talking about you, go sign up for the Patreon.
Yeah, it's that simple.
And the last few Patreon episodes have been pretty good too, if I do say so myself. We brought Kelsey back on in the last episode. We got some good Celtics and Kardashian insights from her. We talked about the Malik Beasley
insights
situation
well.
for like 20 minutes. If that's something that's interesting to you guys, it's a good time. We give you a lot of the real takes. We try to keep your third eye open on all of our episodes, but we keep our third eye extra open on the Patreon episodes because it's just for the family.
Exactly. When it's just for the family, that's when we are like extremely, extremely keeping it open and really like, giving the truest takes that we can possibly muster with our knowledge and our observations and what we're reading and what we're hearing. And so I think that's the best sales pitch that we can and it's only $3 a month. I mean, come on.
It's not that much money. $3 a month. That's like you can join our family just like James Harden and Lil Baby are apparently very close. Did you see that the NBA's new thing, like their new guidelines for what players can and can't do on the road during COVID? Is talking about how there's an exemption for you can go out and see people who are your longtime close personal friends. I think James Harden and Lil Baby kind of fall under that.
Definitely.
James Harden goes to Atlanta to go to Lil Baby's birthday party. Then they're in the club in Vegas. None of them have masks on. He still hasn't reported to training camp. He actually just landed back in Houston today.
Took his COVID test, apparently.
Took his first COVID test. You have to have 2 or 3 negative tests before you can actually go to training camp. So it's going to probably be later in the week that he actually shows up. Still hasn't said anything to his coach, Steven Silas. None of the players know anything about what's going on. We're all just kind of seeing it on Instagram. He's trying to get traded, and I don't know if it's going to be successful. I think Houston's not going to just back into it.
Shout out to James Harden for living out the Drake song from way back when, Houston, Atlanta, Vegas. He has been in Houston, Atlanta, Vegas for the last 4 days, from Atlanta to Vegas, now back to Houston. He has been partying with Lil Baby. The ESPN Daily podcast today, I don't know if you listened to that.
I haven't.
That was with Tim McMahon and
I'm sure that's going to be good then.
And Pablo, and they were talking, and Tim McMahon was going into his reporting about he's found these people's Instagram profiles and has deduced that they are close friends of Lil Baby, and he's trying to put the pieces together on where James Harden is. And I mean, a lot of people have also drawn the parallel to when Dennis Rodman left the 98 Bulls to go on vacation in Las Vegas, but that was a sanctioned Phil Jackson operation. That's one big difference, is that Phil Jackson was like, okay, Dennis, you can go do what you want. We're going to send this coach with you. I forget the coach's name, but that was kind of okayed by Phil Jackson. Whereas James Harden hasn't communicated anything with the Rockets, and
this is an even more extreme version of what Jimmy Butler did with the Timberwolves a couple of years ago, where he wanted to trade. They didn't trade him quick enough, So he just, blew off camp for a couple of weeks. He finally shows up. His first day at practice, he goes on the court, picks the other, all the third stringers as his team, destroys the other starters in a scrimmage, and then goes and does the interview with Rachel Nichols where he talks about how he just wants to win so badly. This is like, if you replace the showing up to practice and showing up the other starters and then doing a TV interview, if you replace that with going out and partying in a club during a deadly pandemic and not wearing a mask, blatantly violating the league protocols in order to own, I guess whatever the equivalent of to own the libs is, giving yourself COVID to own the libs, except it's owning Tillman Fertitta.
Yeah, it's owning the Trump's donors, which like in a vacuum that's cool, but not now in a pandemic. No. In a pandemic, it's bad.
I think Harden should be suspended by the league for this.
He should at least get suspended for like 5 to 10.
Yeah, I don't like to be the police. I don't like to be although I know James Harden is a fan of the police given his thin blue line mask that he wore to the bubble, but
no, I mean, listen, 5 to 10 is reasonable. I
think the league
we're not putting it in our test. We're not putting in our test thing on him, but it's like, okay, you're going to lose 5 to 10 games if you do this bullshit. And honestly, I mean, and that's because that's also a precedent, if they say do this for James Harden, that's a precedent of putting it in perspective. What would happen if in the middle of the season, someone on one of these teams breaks protocol, goes to a restaurant, goes to a club, goes to a strip club in the middle of the season? You're going to be out 7 to 10 games because of how the season schedule is designed. There's pretty much games every other day. And so, you're going to lose that much time if you get caught breaking protocol or, what have you. So, I feel like that, too, is also, kind of a reasonable number to be like, okay, this is what it's going to cost you. So, put it in perspective and realize what you're doing to your team by doing those things.
You guys, know that I'm not a huge fan of stars trying to force trades to different places. I just as a fan, I don't really like it that much. I cannot blame anybody for looking at Tillman Fertitta owning your team and being like, "Yeah, I'm good. I don't want to do this." But you have to not handle it like this. This is just a bad look for Harden. This is like if you took the Jimmy Butler thing, but then added on, he's literally risking his life and other people's lives that are around him in order to make this point. It's going to be really interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens once he talks. If the player empowerment absolutists on Twitter are going to go to the place of going out and partying without a mask in order to get yourself traded is actually good.
Right. It's not. It's bad. We saw the Woj bomb today, which that was the news that broke that he's willing to he's opening up his list for Philadelphia, which we knew was going to happen. That was a no-brainer, but also other
I thought that they had a done deal in place 3 weeks ago.
Some said.
Some have reported.
Some had reported out there on the interwebs that it was
and some are still sticking with it and haven't walked it back. Right, some walked it back. Shout out to the homie Pooch, that Anthony Puccio who covers the Nets. Yeah. He reported that it was a done deal, and then a couple days ago he walked it back and said, "Look, I got that wrong."
Fortunately, when you report things, they have to actually happen.
Right. So respect to him for walking it back and taking the L. But that other dude is just still out here saying, "Hey, it's still it's still a done deal. It's still gonna happen." But
it's whack. It's whack. But luckily,
we learned nothing from Count on Aryeh.
No, we learned nothing. We learned nothing from those days of the mid internet, the mid free agencies from 2014-15 that we learned nothing, I guess.
Dude, Aryeh was running the grift during the Kawhi stuff last year.
That's right. And
then this year he's pivoted to being a COVID truther and MAGA guy.
That's right, because he doesn't believe in masks and he thinks it's like tyranny or whatever. So but regardless, the Harden thing, I think we've all decided that Brooklyn's not going to happen unless Brooklyn can figure out a way to, unless they trade Kyrie Irving. Which they should. They could. I mean, listen.
I don't think they will, but
they don't. They probably won't. But if you're them, why wouldn't you? And it's and Durant has already given his blessing. So, like, if we're going to start the dialogue about the Harden trade for Brooklyn at all, it has to include Kyrie, because Dinwiddie, LeVert, Jared Allen, all those guys, Joe Harris, all those guys combined, it's just not going to work. You're not going to do it. And none of their picks are going to matter, because if they have James Harden and Kevin Durant, like, they're going to be really good, and in Brooklyn, they're going to get guys to come play with them. So those draft picks aren't going to be worth much.
But you have to keep in mind, though, this is all speculation, because Kevin Durant said that he's never even talked to James Harden about them playing together.
Which
he said that was fake, made up rumors.
Which we've known Kevin Durant to tell the truth in front of the microphone
all the time.
Always.
Never
always.
lied.
He has never lied. He's also never been one to put out his perspective in mass via different media vehicles. If, burner accounts to be specific.
Yeah.
So I mean, you just have to take that into account. And it's like, and I don't begrudge him if he wants James Harden. It makes sense.
I'd rather
James
have
Harden's way better than Kyrie Irving.
For as much of a pain as James Harden seems like he is, in terms of the way that he's handling this whole situation, I would still rather have him on my team, both as a player and as a guy to deal with on a day-to-day basis, than Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, for sure. And he's already played with him before, so it's not, there's going to be even less of a learning curve, I think. Even though Durant loves Kyrie, I think if push came to shove, he would be like, yes, absolutely, get me James Harden. So I think that's still on the table if they can finesse it. And then obviously I think the dream scenario, if you're Houston, is that you get Philly involved, but Morey, I think smartly, doesn't want to put them on the table yet. He wants to see what they can do with this revamped supporting cast around Ben Simmons and Embiid. And I totally love that, because the thing about Harden is, like, yes, he's great, but Simmons is still a kid, you know what I mean? Like, he can still get so much better. And I would love to kind of see what you could do with doing a better job of building the team around him, which I think they have done. So I don't blame Morey for not pulling the trigger right now before they've even played a game with this new team on the Sixers.
I said when the Sixers hired Doc, this was even before they brought Daryl in, but when they hired Doc, I said that I wanted to see Simmons and Embiid together, because I wanted to see them use Simmons the way that the Clippers used Blake during Doc's first year there, where he was like the third place MVP. And that was the year that Chris was out for like half the season, and Blake was basically the point guard for that team. And that was his best year. That was their best. I think that was the best team that the Clippers had during the Lob City era.
That was the year that so they beat the Spurs in the first round. And
no, that was the following year. This was the Donald Sterling year.
Okay. I was thinking of the year after that, because I do remember CP got hurt in that game 7, and Blake basically put them up like 3-1 by himself. So they had a great run, and obviously Doc knows how to play with a forward that can play in transition, makes plays for other people. And
this was the first year that Doc took the job, was the year that I'm talking about.
Okay.
The 13-14.
Okay.
That was the best Blake year, and that was the best Lob City Clippers team, at least in the regular season. And they basically played through Blake the entire time. I want to see, and obviously, that was also the year that DeAndre really came into his own and figured out his role. And obviously, Embiid is a way more talented player than DeAndre in basically every single way. So, and Simmons is a better passer and a better defender than Blake was.
And he's faster. Simmons is. They're different players, but I just think Simmons is like an upgraded version of what Blake was. You know what I mean? Like, I just think everything comes faster to Simmons. He sees things quicker, and things are easier for him. It's like it comes more naturally to Ben Simmons, and I want to see that. And if I totally respect Morey for being like, you know what? Let's see how it is. Because also, it's like Simmons is 6'10". Like, what if he becomes like an even better finisher at the rim? What if he gets a little bit of a mid-range game? Then all of a sudden, it's like, how much of a difference is there between Harden and that? If Simmons is doing what he does on the defensive end, where he guards multiple positions, can run the break and really clean up the glass as well, and be just a great defender. Like, to me, I totally understand why. And if I were Philly, I wouldn't trade Ben Simmons for James Harden.
maybe you do eventually, but I want to see what it looks like first.
Yeah, you got to give it a chance. You got to give it a chance.
All the other moves that they've made, bringing in Danny Green, bringing in Seth Curry, they have this other, Daryl, in the short time that he's been there, he's put guys around those two that I think are going to fit them well and complement what those two guys can bring. You want to at least see it and try it out. Maybe at the deadline they decide, look, this isn't working, and they maybe engage with the Rockets about the Harden-Simmons trade. But you at least try it out and see how it works.
Yeah, you got to give it a shot. Yeah, and with a new coach, you got to give it a shot. And obviously, they made some really nice moves to add 3-point shooting to that team that desperately needed it. And they got rid of Horford, which was really cramping both Simmons and Embiid. So I feel like they've solved both of those issues. So I think this is the perfect time, though, to start the dialogue about the destination that I think is what I think James Harden, where we both see him going. And that is...
This is a dialogue.
This is a dialogue that we're starting. And James Harden is from LA, and I think what James Harden needs the most is come back to the West Coast and come back, but not coming back to LA, Sacramento. And the reason why we believe this will happen is because Aneel Ranadive clearly has the power with the 3 phones.
Joe Dumars had the 2 phones. He was the shadow GM. Aneel has alphaed him with the 3 phones. We were just kind of talking about this you and I were texting about this last night, and we were kind of trying to decide, is this going to be Joe Dumars taking back the power and swinging this Harden trade, or is it going to be Aneel Ranadive really cementing his power? But then we decided, what if they combined their phones? What if they had the 2 phones from Joe Dumars, the 3 phones from Aneel Ranadive? They're all blowing up the Rockets at the same time, and Tillman
5 phones.
5 phones. Tillman can't compete with that. He doesn't have 5 phones. He has. I don't want to say Tillman has a flip phone, because I don't think Tillman could get let into any of like the rich person clubs or whatever with a flip phone. But Tillman has a smartphone. He has like an iPhone, but he can't afford the data plan, so he can only use it when it's on Wi-Fi. He cannot compete with 5 phones.
No, he can't. And Sacramento has 5 phones at their disposal in the front office, and I just think that the power of the 5 phones, plus a hypothetical deal of Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, and whatever else you give them, might be. I think that's much more enticing if I'm Houston than whatever Brooklyn can give me. Also, take some picks from Sacramento because they're fucking Sacramento. Like,
even with Harden, they're not gonna like.
Their picks are way more valuable than whatever Brooklyn's are going to be because Kevin Durant is on the Nets. And they're in the East.
Zach Lowe has taken to calling James Harden a walking playoff berth, which is like a close cousin of a walking bucket steam face emoji. But
yeah.
Would James Harden in Sacramento be a walking playoff berth?
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, you basically have like him and De'Aaron Fox. I really like that idea because that's basically like De'Aaron Fox is basically like if John Wall was still healthy and like 10 years younger. So I like that fit, but like you basically would have nobody else. I still think they would do it because the Kings are desperate for anything to make them relevant, and it's clear that. And also Monty McNair, keeping your third eye open. Monty McNair, their new GM.
Yeah,
where did he just come from? He was Daryl Morey's assistant, and now he is, if not actually in charge, because Aneel Ranadive and Joe Dumars with their 5 combined phones are actually in charge. But Monty McNair, he's there. He knows James Harden well. He's a Daryl Morey disciple.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So no, hey, I see that. Yeah.
Buddy is still, as far as we know, not talking to Luke Walton, so he doesn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Give him a fresh start, him next to John Wall. I think that's a pretty natural fit because John Wall's like a pass first guy and Buddy wants to shoot it a lot. I think it could work.
They also have a team that really doesn't have any centers whatsoever. I mean, they have Hassan Whiteside, and that's pretty much it. So we already know that James Harden loves to play on teams without centers, really. So he'll be able to cook and do his thing. Like I think the dialogue should be started because obviously Sacramento, if anybody should be desperate enough to do it, they should be desperate. And
Them and the Knicks, which,
yeah.
by the way, my boy Rohan from Sports Illustrated reported yesterday that someone close to James Harden views the Rockets' toxic culture as the Knicks of the South.
That was pretty savage.
Which, A, who has created the entire culture in Houston for the last 8 years? James Harden.
Mm-hmm.
But B, I think that's kind of unfair to Jim Dolan. Because Jim Dolan is a lot of things. He is not a broke boy. Jim Dolan will spend money.
Facts. Yeah, James Dolan is not broke, and that's a big difference between him and Tillman Fertitta. And one of the things on the ESPN Daily Pod that I listened to today is that Tillman really takes it personally when people talk about how broke he is.
Well, because he doesn't actually have money. It's the same thing.
So there we go.
It's just like when when Trump would get really defensive when people talk about how small his hands are or whatever. So another aspect of the Harden thing that kind of bothers me, and I've heard other people talk about this. It's not my own. I'm not the only person that's made this point, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot the last couple of days. Uh-huh. That's another aspect of this that just kind of doesn't sit right with me, the way that Harden is handling this.
Mm-hmm.
What has been the whole conversation around this year's coaching carousel? It's been diversity and a lot of, wanting these black assistants who have never been head coaches before, who have put in their time and are qualified to get these opportunities to be a head coach. Silas
with good players, not just rebuilding.
Right, and Stephen Silas been an assistant for 20 years. He's been grinding. He's put in his time. He's the son of a legendary coach in Paul Silas. He's somebody that everybody in the entire league and the entire sport respects. He has, worked hard over 2 decades to earn this opportunity. And, he comes in, he takes over for D'Antoni. It seems like there's some talk that things might go sideways in terms of them asking for a trade. They hadn't asked for a trade at the time. So he's coming in, at least on paper, with a team that had just been to the second round of the playoffs last year and was still going to be pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that happens is James Harden ghosts him and he's forced to kind of go up there every day at training camp in these Zoom calls and basically say, yeah, he's not here. I don't know what to tell you. He hasn't said anything to me. I don't know. If the players, and I know a lot of the players have talked about wanting more black coaches, wanting these guys to get these opportunities. Once these guys get the opportunities, you can't just shit on them just out the gate when you haven't even played for them yet or tried to develop a relationship.
He didn't give him a chance. I mean, that does suck. That does suck on his behalf. And also, it's like Rafael Stone made a big trade. He's trying to do something to change the mojo.
Yeah.
Westbrook clearly didn't want to be there. They got a first round pick out of it. Which they didn't have, any. So I they've done as good of a job as they can do, both Stone and Silas, and they're really getting the short end of the stick from Harden that he's not even giving them a shot. Well, I will say, him showing up at camp and taking the test, I think, is a little bit of a realization that, hey, I have to show up to work. I can't just put this off and not be there and still get paid $30 million a year. And while we talked about the NBA suspending him, I think if he comes back, doesn't test positive, I think ultimately, because he is a superstar, they're not going to do anything to him.
Right, which I don't. But speaking of NBA league policy, did you see these new tweets from Woj? This is a huge scoop.
Yes, I was actually about to bring these up to you. So please tell us what the new dress policy is for NBA coaches via Woj.
This is from Woj 2 minutes ago. It's 2 tweets. NBA coaches are no longer required to wear sport coats during games. Sources tell Zach Lowe and me.
There we go.
Coaches must wear business attire, no track pants during games. Coaches must wear face masks during games, sources said.
Okay.
And the second tweet is, coaches must wear masks at all times with limited exceptions when at team facilities or the arena, during team travel, and during practices and games, sources tell ESPN.
Okay, so no more. So it'll be a lot of team issued pullovers and polos.
It's gonna be like there was in the bubble. I will say, Tibbs has to be pretty mad that they can't wear tracksuits now that he's back in the league.
Oh, and he's the king of the tracksuit.
He would have coached in a tracksuit if there had not been a dress code for coaches. I think he was looking at this. I think maybe I know he wanted to get back into coaching because he's a lifer. But I think one of the things that was appealing to him was he took that job right like a week before the bubble started, when it had kind of become clear what the dress code was going to be, and it seemed like it was going to be a little bit more lenient.
Mm-hmm.
I think he thought he was going to be able to coach in a tracksuit, and he's not.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's unfortunate, but I mean, he'll still be. I mean, he'll just have to wear slacks for a little bit, and then he can change back into his sweats right after the game. I mean, that's the one thing about NBA coaches that is that they always have slacks on deck, or they have sweats on deck, like right after, all the time. So even if they have to wear their real pants, hard pants, if you will, I don't feel too bad for the coaches that they have to wear slacks or something during games. And I think it's totally reasonable to not have them wear sport coats and have them wear suits, because honestly, that is kind of ridiculous. Like they're surrounded by a bunch of sweaty dudes and a lot of intense people, and in the playoffs it's like tons of fans, and there's a lot of heat happening, and it's just like they're supposed to be coaching basketball. They're not hosting a board meeting. Like it.
There was a Simpsons episode. It was like not a good Simpsons episode. It was like a late period Simpsons episode that I saw several years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was like Homer was in a suit, going out somewhere. I don't even remember. It was like probably never. Again, it was like probably like not even a good episode. I just remember this one joke. He's in a suit, and Marge was like, "Homer, you look so handsome. You look like an NBA coach." And like this was like I think this came out like right around the time they put the coach's dress code in. We do still expect Billy Donovan to be all about the pregame drip, though. He's going to show up in the arena all suited up, just like he had been during the playoffs.
100%. Billy Donovan is never going to not be in a full suit. And so I expect nothing less from Billy Donovan. All the other coaches, I can't say will be in those that will be suited and booted as Billy D. But like I think I expect nothing less from Billy Donovan than to stunt as he always has.
A few years ago, I was at a friend's house and he was playing 2K, and this was when Fred Hoiberg was still the coach of the Bulls, and Fred Hoiberg in the game had a tie on, and Fred in real life does not wear a tie when he's coaching because he has a heart condition, and so it's like his blood circulation, like he can't actually wear a tie.
Right.
And so like they took it, and I took a picture of the TV with him wearing a suit, and I texted it to him and was like, "Why do they have you wearing a tie?" And he was like, "I don't know. They need to do something about that."
Wow.
So,
all right. Well, Fred Hoiberg made sure that they did something about it, I guess.
I guess so. I mean, shout out to Fred Hoiberg, by the way. He's at Nebraska, getting the bag, just living a good life.
Yeah, college coaches have it made. Yeah,
especially at a school like Nebraska, where it's a football school. So if you even make the tournament one time, you're like considered a massive success.
Yeah, no, he's living the good life. He doesn't have that NBA pressure. Hoiberg's doing great. What else do we need to talk about? I mean, we talked about Harden. That was obviously a key topic that we needed to discuss.
There's some good stuff on road tripping with
the Lakers. Yeah, the Lakers, the road tripping stuff. I think the Kyrie stuff, how he talked about when. So we talked about this back when it happened on the Etc. podcast that Kevin Durant has with Eddie Gonzalez.
Yeah,
they did an interview with Kyrie, and Kyrie was talking about how he was so happy that for quote unquote the first time he had someone in the clutch that could make a big play, make a big shot. And LeBron on Road Trip and said that he asked for the full transcript, read it all the way through, and then went in this whole thing and basically being like, me and Kyrie, it didn't work out. Like he's like, I tried my hardest. I tried to look out for him. I wanted him to be an MVP of the league, and I wanted him to be this, and it just never worked out. And he said that ultimately it did hurt him a little bit that Kyrie said that about him. And Kyrie did hit the biggest shot, maybe of LeBron that helped LeBron win in the Game 7 against Golden State. But to say that he was the only guy hitting those shots for them is a lie. And I think LeBron's probably right about this. Like, I mean, as we see with Anthony Davis, it doesn't take a whole lot for it to go well when LeBron's trying to support you,
I think that in typical LeBron fashion, he is exaggerating a little bit. I don't like when he says all I ever wanted was to help Kyrie win MVP. I don't think that's true. I think LeBron was looking out for himself. But I also do think that genuinely at the end of the day, LeBron cared about Kyrie. LeBron tried to put him in positions to help him succeed. LeBron talked him up. LeBron, the idea of LeBron saying, I think he could have won MVP, that sounds ridiculous because Kyrie isn't an MVP type of player, but LeBron would always talk about that back when he was on the Cavs, or like when he was first, I don't remember if he said these words in the letter that he wrote when he said he was coming back to Cleveland, but like that summer and that whole first season, I remember him saying a million different times in interviews, I think Kyrie could be an MVP. He was really invested in talking him up and mentoring him, and I kind of know how it happened. Kyrie kind of just didn't like being in his shadow, and so it didn't end up working out. But I do think LeBron has a point that, like, it's not like Kyrie needs to just be totally deferential to him all the time, but just the idea that, LeBron did try to help him out, and LeBron did try to put him in positions to succeed, and obviously it worked out because they won a championship. And so I could understand how LeBron would be hurt when he hears him go on the Durant podcast and say he's the only other guy that I think can hit that shot. And I could see how LeBron was, and I did enjoy that LeBron as a media mogul was really preaching media literacy, saying I had to go to one of my people and make sure they sent me the whole transcript because I didn't want to take it out of context.
Right, exactly. Being like, I'm looking out for the player. I'm not like one of these people, but
he's not the aggregators.
Like, all the people that wrote the story and wrote the headline with what Kyrie said were totally justified because it's
him
what
and
he
Wendy
said.
Him and Wendy have vented to each other about the aggregators before. That's why he put that in there.
Yeah, exactly. Because they've had enough of those moments together.
There's some other good stuff in the road trip, and also there was. I think we talked about this the last time, but LeBron revealed that he was going to start LeBron brand at Nike, and he wanted Luka to be his first signee. And that whole segment was interesting to me because I think that was the most over-the-top praise of a player who's not on his team or has never been on his team that I've ever heard from LeBron. The whole Luka segment.
Yeah, no, he loves Luka. It's very clear that he wants to, Luka grew up loving him, and obviously as he's played against him, their matchups have been excellent ever since Luka came into the league, even though he was a kid. And so they both play really well against each other, and yeah, I mean, I think LeBron sees a lot of Luka, a lot of himself in Luka.
I gotta say, this is a pretty tough scene for the Trey over Luka truthers that are still out there, the Yodas and other such folks.
Yeah, well,
Trae Young is on Clutch. And LeBron is talking about how Luka is the closest to him since like Magic Johnson or whatever.
Yeah, that is a tough scene for the Trey truthers, and it's like, listen, I respect Hawks fans trying to believe in it, but like that was, I mean, they're never going to win that trade. It doesn't matter how good Cam Reddish is going to be; they're never going to win that trade, ever. It just because Luka is that good.
You're gonna have to, right? And I think that doesn't need to even necessarily mean like I don't know. The whole
it's not
Luka
anything bad about either one of those guys. No. It just means that they're not Luka, who is like a generational,
who's like
wing
Luka's
talent,
the kind
like
of
LeBron
guy where like
James.
A week into his NBA career, we're just like, oh, this is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and he's a sure thing. Like I think even before, I think when Zion came into the league and all the hype that he had, I think last year the league and the promotional machine kind of overlooked Luka a little bit. Obviously, they included him in a lot of stuff, but I think in the planning, they just assumed Zion was going to ascend to this level, and Luka was really the guy that ascended. And it's just so clear that he's an MVP caliber player already. I think, like you said on the last pod on the Patreon, he has a lot of momentum to potentially to win the MVP this year. And I think he's putting Dallas in great position to say, hey, Giannis, this summer, what's good? Do you want to come play with Luka? Like, I can totally see that happening because Luka is the exact type of, does a lot of the same things that Giannis does not do. Like, he's so
Giannis still hasn't talked, has he?
No, and he hasn't signed. And there was some weird comments from Chris Middleton and Pat Connaughton that they gave him Sharpies to sign.
The whole team gave him Sharpies for his birthday as a gift.
Right. Obviously to try and convince him to sign as to sign the Supermax. And obviously it's been two weeks since the free agent, or 3 weeks since the free agent period opened, and he hasn't signed it. So that seems to indicate to me that he's not going to sign it. And so
I'm starting to think that way too. I'm going to have to, I mean, there's still time. There's still 2 weeks, but for right now, I'm going to have to take the L on this one. We're all about taking L's and being accountable to each other for our takes. For right now, I mean, the deadline's not till the 21st. He could still sign it.
True.
But for right now, I got to take the L on this one.
I don't feel, if I'm a Bucks fan, I wouldn't feel great about my chances of him signing it. And I just don't know, and the report, there has been reporting that the Bogdanovich thing did hurt their chances a little bit. And it's like, how could it not? And so, I mean, for Milwaukee's sake, I hope he does stay, but just the vibes we're getting right now, it just seems like it's not going to happen.
The thing I've now started to hear from people I've talked to who are closer to this than I am are that the Bucks are still not worried at all about him leaving. He might sign next summer and not sign this summer, or not sign this time. But they're not actually worried that he's going to leave, which maybe is misplaced. But who knows? We'll see. Have you seen Zion yet?
No, I haven't.
Dude, he looks good. He looks like he's lost a lot of weight. He looks like he's in shape.
Dude, I'm with it. I hope he does. I hope he's in shape. I hope he's good, dude. That would be awesome.
So, I mean, that's interesting. I still don't think the Pelicans are going to be that good because I think the roster is kind of disjointed. But I hope that. I mean, Zion was so good for those 2 weeks in January that he was able to play before the season shut down, and then obviously there was all the weird stuff with the Amazon Prime quarantine in the bubble, and they just didn't want to be there, so you can't even really judge it. And he clearly was out of shape. It looks like he's really, during the quarantine and during the pandemic, since they left the bubble, he's been taking the conditioning stuff seriously. He looks like he's down a good 10 or 20 pounds from what he was last season.
If they really are going to play him at the 3, he's got to be.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like something that they're really serious about. And I mean, he is going to be very physically imposing at the 3. And he's going to be a mismatch problem ideally, but you have to hope that's why he's got to lose some of that weight, is that to be just a little bit more mobile on the perimeter, guarding guys that are more comfortable out there, because that I think is where he struggled last year, even at the 4. Was that I think some of the quickness and not just the quickness of the players, but the quickness of the ball movement and the decision-making, I think was a little hard for Zion to catch up with last year.
Yeah.
But experience helps with that a lot. When you see the actions over and over and it becomes natural to you, then you pick up on it and you can anticipate. And so I'm not gonna sit here. I said this about DeAndre Ayton last year or before the season, that both Zion and Ayton understand kind of spacing, rolling, moving on offense, that I do think that if they just play a little bit and get more seasoning, which I thought Ayton become a much better defender last year, I think the same thing could happen with Zion, where if he's just there, understands things, has seen things happen before, has watched enough film to know where things are coming from, that can help just really make him so much less of a liability on defense, which I think he was especially in the bubble. And the Pelicans as a whole, I think the well was poisoned with them because they all knew at that point that Alvin was gone.
I just texted you a picture of Zion from this week from training camp.
Oh, wow. My gosh, he is super skinny.
He looks good.
Yeah, he's super skinny. Holy crap. Yeah, no, that's wild. No,
I just remember last year, before the shutdown, they came here in December, and this was before he had started playing, but he was just there and he was like shooting jumpers, and I took a video of him shooting jumpers and tweeted it out, and I was just getting all of these people replying to it. Was kind of one of those tweets that like blew up, and then
the body shamers were
the Zion body shamers were out there.
Yeah,
the body shaming worked. He looks good.
I mean, yeah, he looks great. I mean, he definitely looks like he's lost. I feel like he's lost more than 10 pounds. I feel like it looks like he's lost like 30. I mean, the way I'm seeing it. But hey, I mean, that's also being in the NBA, having a nutritionist, having a chef. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he was not like, that was his first year last year with kind of all those experiences and having all those things. And now he has that even more dialed in. And I'm sure after all the hype and having things really not go his way at all in year one, that motivated him big time to come back and get in a little bit better shape, maybe get on the Peloton a little bit more, a little bit like, you know, Carmelo, also a big, you know, spin class guy following the lead of Draymond, who of course is a big spin class guy.
By the way, shout out to Draymond. He was one of the 2 Warriors players that tested positive.
Yeah, get well soon. I know he also recently had a child, or him and his wife recently had another child. So
yeah, I think that's their second.
Yeah, so definitely really big shout out to Draymond Green. Shout out to James Wiseman as well, the Rook. Yeah. That sucks. You know, his first training camp, obviously, they already are dealing with the coronavirus like we all are, but now also you know, it's his first training camp on top of that. So it's really, you know, unfortunate. The Blazers also got bit with some coronavirus. They had to delay the start of training camp. They were supposed to start on Sunday, and they weren't able to get a practice in until they got a practice in today, right?
Yeah, today was their first practice. It was supposed to be Sunday, but then they had to shut down the facility that day for deep cleaning. They had 3 positives. Only one was a player. Obviously, they haven't said who it is, but we don't want to put anybody on blast, but I've got a pretty good idea of who it is just based on some investigative journalism that I've done. But there was one player that tested positive. Nurkic is still not in camp because he has to clear the protocol because he just got back from Bosnia, and you have to have a couple of negative tests in a row before you can actually enter the facility.
Right.
But Dame talked today, CJ talked today, Covington talked today, and it seems like guys are, you know, in good shape. They're ready to go.
There's been footage of Carmelo, so we know Carmelo is not one of the guys that has it either. He's been practicing, and he has cornrows now.
Yeah, he's got cornrows. That's a big thing. A dialogue that we want to start on here about Carmelo.
Yes.
He's coming off the bench. We think that there is a chance of Carmelo winning 6th Man of the Year. That's just a dialogue we're trying to start.
If he averages like 16 or 17 a game off the bench, I don't see why he couldn't do it.
The votes are going to be there. The media support is going to be there.
For sure. And he'll have New York on his side, obviously, which there's a disproportionate amount of voters for the MVP award out of New York.
Out of New York and also out of LA, which means LeBron adjacent, and Melo is LeBron's boy. And so, you know, LeBron is going to be talking it up.
Exactly. So it works. And again, this is the same argument that we had about Dame potentially as an MVP candidate, is that if Portland is a top 3 team in the West, that makes it much more possible for these things to happen and these awards to come, because ultimately that's how you win individual awards, is by having team success. Obviously, the Russell Westbrook Oklahoma City Thunder, when they were the 6th seed, is the exception to the rule, but you know that it doesn't happen like that. Usually you have to be at the top of your conference. And one guy that I think we also forgot that I think is going to have a lot of momentum, especially if they're really good, is Jimmy Butler.
For MVP?
Yeah.
I don't see it.
I just feel like because a lot of people I think are overlooking Miami, that it's a bubble, you know, thing. But I do think if they're at the top of the East and having gone to the Eastern or to the NBA Finals, I feel like Jimmy will have a reasonable case.
He'll have a case. I don't think he'll have the media support.
Okay. Yeah.
It's all a game.
No, you're right. You're right. And I think Lillard has also, you know, Lillard has been in the top 3, top 4 of MVP voting before. It's not like he's new there, you know, and for Jimmy, that would be the case.
There's one more, speaking of the Blazers, there's one more dialogue to be started from the LeBron road tripping episode. That something you pointed out to me that I thought was interesting.
Okay.
About his discussion of Jeannie Buss being the first woman team owner to win a championship.
Yes. And then they said that she was the only female owner in the NBA, and then LeBron caught himself and said, well, we have Jody Allen, the sister of the late great. And he didn't say Jody Allen, but he said in Portland, the sister of the late great is basically what he said. And we have been proponents of the LeBron eventually buying the Blazers theory. And I mean, one of the ways to get there, obviously, is that one of the other things that LeBron said is that he wants to line up his free agency with Bronny becoming a free agent, or Bronny graduating. So if Portland, say, gets a draft pick where they pick Bronny, then you get LeBron, and then you start greasing the wheels of potentially having LeBron buy the team when he retires.
It's just a dialogue. It's just we're just planting the seeds. We're just starting the dialogue.
We're starting the dialogue as a possibility because realistically, the Buss family's never going to sell. The Ballmer's never going to sell the Clippers. I don't think Gilbert is going to sell, and I'm really not just that Gilbert is not going to sell the Cavs to LeBron. I also think that LeBron is making his home on the West Coast, and so if he lives in LA, it's much easier for him to have control over a team in Portland as opposed to a team in Cleveland.
I also don't think LeBron wants to write Dan Gilbert a $2 billion check.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to make Gilbert rich, paying him for the team that he basically helped make as valuable as it is.
Also, Blazers.
Sierra Canyon.
Well, there's that, but one of LeBron's high-profile business interests also has the word Blaze in it.
Blaze Pizza.
New Jersey sponsor.
Channing Frye, his good pal, who he insisted be on the Road Trippin podcast, lives in Portland and was doing the Road Trippin podcast, I believe, from Sun River.
Yeah, we can replace the sizzle pie, which is trash, that's in the Rose Garden
with Blaze
Pizza.
I mean, so sizzle pie is not trash. It just has a time and a place.
No, sizzle pie is trash.
I'm
sorry.
Okay, I don't think it's trash. I just think it's not my ideal slice.
Sizzle pie is bad. It's not Schmitza bad. Like Schmitza is like inedible. But sizzle pie is not good.
Sizzle has been there for me when I've been like getting out of Ron Tom's or something like that, and like I need a slice. And and I'm gonna go there with
I'll give him that.
Yeah, and you can go. I mean, back in the before times, you could go sit down there, with your homies and with your crew or whoever, and get a bunch of slices. They also have pizza for the vegans, which shout out to the vegans, shout out to their
shout
family.
Out to Alex. I know she's a Patreon subscriber.
Shout out to Alex and her family. Shout out to Dane. I'm not gonna hate on sizzle pie that much, but I would like to have a Blaze pizza.
The Rose Garden can do better for a pizza option.
There's a lot of pizza options that they could do that are not sizzle pie, because Portland does have a lot of really good pizza.
Blaze Pizza makes inroads.
Yeah,
you get easy tie-in with Blazers.
Easy.
It just makes sense. This just makes sense on so many levels.
I know. This is making me hungry now. I really want to have dinner all of a sudden. But I don't know. What do we have anything else that we need to touch on though? I feel like we have some other things, don't we? Or no?
I mean, has there been anything else good from like these media quotes?
Not really. I mean, we've covered the Kyrie stuff. We talked about LeBron on the road tripping. We talked about the Blazers having COVID. We talked about all the things that I feel like we needed to cover. I don't know. I feel like for the because there's no new vibes to check. Is basically where I'm at. So I feel like this is a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah. We'll be back later this week with a Patreon episode for the family. Again, shout out to the family if you're listening.
Shout out to the family.
We got you with another episode later in the week. You can, as always, find us on Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, on Patreon. We post these on there too. So if you are subscribing to the Patreon feed, you will also get the free episodes on that feed. So you don't have to subscribe to 2 feeds.
Right, exactly. So all the pod will be delivered.
We're the convenience boys.
The convenience boys, not to be confused with the bodega boys, but we are going to be conveniencing for you for podcasts, not just sandwiches and whatever snacks and stuff you might need.
The Blazers preseason opener is Friday.
The return of Hassan Whiteside.
3 days out. I have not heard anything about whether media is going to be there. I'm assuming that the media policy is not going to be ready in time for the preseason. If it is, I will be there, but I have no idea. Other than that, I mean, you can check me out at Bleacher Report. You can check Erik out in the New York Times and other outlets.
Yes, the New York Times.
The Gray Lady, as some call it.
Yeah, the Gray Lady. Where they have all the news that's fit to print in the December 4th issue specifically. But anyway, check me out on Twitter at Erik_Gundersen. You can also check my Blazers and NBA tweets at Blazer Banter.
Are you going to bring back the newsletter?
Oh, yeah. The newsletter is coming out as well. blazerbanter.substack.com. And yeah, we're excited, and I'm going to be covering a lot of Blazers early on in the season as well for the Associated Press. So I'll be on a lot of beats with basketball coming back.
We got some big things coming, so keep it locked here. We'll be back with a Patreon episode later. Thanks for listening.